We will get started. Thanks for joining. Great to have the Southern Utah University team here and all the attendees in the audience as well for this great webinar building on a presentation by the SUU team at the First Year Experience Conference. Today's webinar is Meaningful Student Connection via Social Apps and how it helps to drive positive outcomes for students. And with that, I will start with introductions to welcome our presenters from Southern Utah University, Tanner Corbridge, Vanessa Loamanu, and Amin Harris. I will turn it over to SUU team.
But yeah, I'm Amin Harris. I'm the director of student onboarding and retention. My role here is to help all incoming students, transition from where they were to SUU and then through their first year experience. I'm actually going to play a back role here. I'm just going to be in the chat answering questions. Excuse me, the Q&A, not the chat. The Q&A answering questions for clarity. Tanner and Vanessa are our main presenters here. So I'll let them introduce themselves during the presentation, but just to kind of explain what they do. Vanessa is our coordinator of student onboarding and retention. She oversees the peer mentor training, and then Tanner is one of our awesome ACE peer mentors here on campus, as well as an SUU student. So super excited to join you, but I'll turn my camera off now actually and just jump into the Q&A, but super excited for Nearpeer and to be a part of this discussion.
Terrific, thanks. And then Tanner and Vanessa will also introduce themselves additionally when I turn it over to them very shortly. But I first want to say thank you to both of you and to Amin for joining us today. There are so many schools that are always looking at what's working elsewhere, broader than just Nearpeer, but how to help engage students when it's harder and harder to engage and break through and meet students where they are. So thank you for both making the time to put this content together, but also to share it with the audience as well to help everyone. And then from the Nearpeer team, I'm honored to host today's session. I'm Dustin Minocha, founder and CEO of Nearpeer, and also on and will be both. You'll see them briefly here, and then here in the chat to answer questions as well. Christy Rice, our partner engagement lead, and Tom DeShane, our director of partnerships. Both great experts to answer questions, as well as the great experts from SUU as well. So what I'll do here is just share a brief overview of Nearpeer for those of you who are less familiar, and then I'll turn it over to Tanner and Vanessa for a conversation around the webinar topic as well. But about Nearpeer, just for some broader context, for those who are new, the foundation of our work is that we have seen time and time again is that when students feel that they belong in college, and particularly at your college, they're more committed to both enroll, to commit in the first place, but then to actually start in the fall, to be able to stay successfully with higher first year retention, and to be able to succeed and flourish. And our mission is to help 1 million more students do just that. And we're well on our way. It's an ambitious goal, but we're well on our way and proud to partner with schools like Southern Utah University as an innovation partner of ours. And the reason this work becomes so powerful is because it's literally central to our needs as human beings. It's central to Maslow's hierarchy. Belonging and human connection and feeling that you belong is really such a powerful motivator. And sometimes it's not always missed, but sometimes under invested in proactively because there's so many things that are happening reactively, mental health pressures, student challenges, and those kinds of things. So that our work is really preventative in nature to help people have a greater sense of resilience and a greater sense of commitment before they start. And that's what we do as an organization. We're focused on leading at the leading edge, really where science and technology meet to build belonging through an engagement platform of Nearpeer and the program services around that to help initially connect students to each other, to peers, but using that as an opportunity to connect those students then to resources as well, because we know sometimes the students that are most important to reach are the hardest to, who most need the help. And one of the ways that we help make that so effective is we flip the digital model in a way upside down. When we think about Maslow's hierarchy and the need for human connection, so many digital platforms are focused on group chat, and we close your laptop or turn off your phone and you're still by yourself. And so our focus is really one-on-one connection first, so that people build relationships, and when they close their screens, they actually are together in real life, whether maybe they found a roommate, met each other, got together, and so forth. And Nearpeer is built with ethical design principles. And from an outcomes perspective, the greatest gains are those students who most need the help, first gen, students, introverted students, often those that are farthest from campus, whether they be out of state or rural or international as well. And that's primarily the work that we do. And there's a great question as well. There will be a replay sent out to everyone as well. We ourselves work with a diverse set of institutions, really, really diverse, from small private schools like DePauw University to large urban commuter majority Pell campuses like the Cal State University campus in Northridge, and we work with about 10 Cal State schools. And the reason, even though each of those cultures are so different and what students may be looking for in their institution is different, the human desire to connect and feel like you're a part of something and alleviate this worry of will I make friends, will I find my people, will I be accepted, is universal. And so we're proud to work with many large publics, regional public universities, great leaders like Southern Utah, small privates, college success foundations as well, a whole host of institutions across the country. Today's webinar, we're focused more on the needs of Gen Z and ways to engage them and some of what SUU is doing, but just around the outcomes, Nearpeer is very committed to that as well. And just as one example, I'll be brief here in the interest of time, but the largest study ever conducted on a program to help build belonging and connection was done on Nearpeer in the Cal State system across 12,000 students over 18 months in a randomized study. So they literally split their incoming class in half to just compare if we only give half access to Nearpeer, what's the impact? And what they found is for them, it meant 500 more incoming students between more students in the fall starting and then more of them when they were offered Nearpeer actually staying through their first term and first year. So for Cal State Northridge, that was about 500 students, over 5 million in tuition revenue, about a 4% lift in enrollment from new starts and first year retention. We have other great studies like that. I'll just share a few points on some recent survey that we did of incoming students that are the current first year students now, because incoming fall 2025s are quite similar. And then I'll turn it over. For one, what we saw in Nearpeer in surveys that we have done, and schools can do their own surveys as well in Nearpeer, is that 90% of students reported feeling nervous about starting college. Probably not a surprise, but a majority felt most nervous about finding a friend, which I know with the focus on academics and affordability and so many other dynamics, this most human, will I find my people, will I find a friend, was actually the largest one. And 1 in 10 students, even though we support all students in their transition, 1 in 10 actually reported that Nearpeer was the most helpful intervention they had transitioning to college, finding it more helpful to reduce anxiety than, like, say, a tour or admitted student event or orientation. And again, particularly for those that are worried about, will I find my people, you can imagine being able to do that, being so powerful. And students join to help connect with each other, but we use that opportunity with our college partners to also connect them to resources. And 59% said Nearpeer help them also connect to campus resources in addition to connecting with each other. Last thing I'll just say is we also happen to be starting today at the New England Regional Conference for NACAC called NEACAC. If any of you are in New England, we would love to see you. We have an event session tomorrow at 8:10, and there's a couple of other on-demand webinars that we'll send links to after this in case you're interested, one on well-being and belonging and one on recruiting and retention. And we'll send those as resources after the webinar. With that, I will turn it over to Vanessa and Tanner and Eamon. Thanks so much again for joining us.
All right. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that, Dustin. We are so excited to be here today to talk about what has been happening, what we're seeing in our students, as well as how we've been able to integrate and use some of these resources to best help our students as they work through their first year experience. By way of introduction, my name, if this will pull up here, is Tanner Corbridge, and I'm actually currently a student at SUU. This is my last year here in Utah before I graduate with a degree in French and psychology. But I currently get to serve as an ACE peer mentor at Southern Utah University, which is a program that we've created. It's unique here to Southern Utah University, but it is a essentially program where every incoming student, every incoming freshman or first year student receives an ACE and we are their connection point during the summer and during the couple months before they come to school, where we are actually interacting with them, making sure they're set up with housing, making sure that they're feeling okay about their classes. We offer that one-to-one connection with each student, and we've seen it do great things with our retention, with our ability to keep students happy and healthy on campus.
And I'm Vanessa. I'm the coordinator for student onboarding and retention here at SUU. And I help to oversee this ACE Peer Mentor program. I get to work with these amazing students every day and kind of facilitate, that transition from high school, from another university, whatever it is that these students are coming from, as they make that transition to SUU. Awesome. So as we jump into it, just a little bit of an introduction to our campus. This is a quick video to highlight our university. We serve about 12,000 students. So we're a small 4-year university, public institution, and we really focus and emphasize the importance of individualizing the experience for each student and creating opportunities for them to make meaningful connections here on campus, whether it's to staff, faculty, or other students. Students really have the opportunity to tailor their education to their individual needs the way that they need to be successful.
Again, a huge part of this connection to campus is happening during your first year at a university. We've seen through a lot of different studies that those first 6 weeks are so formative in whether or not a student is going to stay enrolled and stay involved in an institution of higher learning. And so to help front that, again, we've implemented a peer mentor program where we are in contact with these students before they come to school and throughout their next year. And again, as an ACE, when we say ACE, we're again referring to that peer mentorship program, I get to work firsthand with these students that are coming to campus for the first time. And I am a member of Gen Z. I was born in 2002, and we have grown up as members of Gen Z hearing over and over again from news outlets and from grandma and grandpa at family dinner, from all these different individuals that we don't know how to interact. You see a couple headings here from so many different news articles talking about the social struggles of Gen Z, talking about how they are unable to connect in person, how they struggle to form connection in person. And as a member of Gen Z, I obviously am inside the bubble, and so it is a bit of a different perspective. But we also have seen some very interesting things through our in-person orientation program, and especially this last year. So the year of 2024 is when it was, no, 2025, yeah. During our freshman orientation, we were seeing groups coming together of these students and interacting like we have never seen before. Even myself, I mean, I'm about 4 years older than most of these incoming students, but these students were grouping together and interacting at levels that we had just never seen happen on campus before. They were forming groups during their short lunch breaks, and we saw them walking up to each other and introducing themselves. And this happens at any sort of large scale event that we're putting on as a university, because there's always going to be people that interact, but we had never seen this number of people wanting to connect and interact. And it got us thinking, what is different about this incoming group of students that might be pushing them or inspiring them to interact in person? And that is what we're going to talk about today. Some of the things that we have seen working in our students, as well as some trends amongst Gen Z students and the incoming freshmen, so that we can better understand what they need and then how to help them. And essentially, we're going to be talking about Gen Z social media usage, because that is a huge part of their interaction and the patterns that they use to form friendships and relationships. We're going to talk about what these patterns and habits look like for in-person interactions. And then we're going to talk about what we as institutions of higher learning can do to better support our incoming freshmen. Just so that we can be clear on a couple terms, when we talk about social media, we are meaning any platform that is used primarily for sharing pictures, for sharing digital content, Snapchat, Facebook, for those that are still using that, Instagram, TikTok, Reels, all of these sorts of things. We're not talking about apps that are focused primarily on real-time communication like FaceTime. We're not referring to FaceTime. We're not referring to Facebook Messenger or any other sort of messaging app like that. And when we refer to Gen Z, we're talking about the generation of people that were born after 1996 And before about 2008-ish, it was about that time frame that these students are being born. It's important to understand a little bit about the history of social media. We, as members of Gen Z, have grown up with this. Facebook was launched in 2004, and it was actually originally made as a program for college students to connect on. I don't know how many of us were aware of that, but Mark Zuckerberg actually created Facebook to allow people to connect in a college environment, which is kind of fun. Later on in the years, around the 2010s, we saw apps coming up like Twitter, which is now X, Vine, which no longer exists. I remember that was a big deal when Vine got booted out off my iPod Touch. That was tragic when that app got discontinued. Instagram, YouTube, these were all starting to pick up and gain some momentum in the 2010s. And earlier on, a lot of these were focusing on sharing events or sharing photos. That was a lot of it. YouTube allowed you to share videos, but originally Instagram didn't even really have a lot of video features. It was mostly just photos that were being shared. And I can very vividly remember when I first got my iPhone. I was 12 years old and it was on my birthday, my 12th birthday. And I remember my parents giving me some presents and one of them starts ringing. And I was like, no way, no way. They got me the Apple iPhone 5C in the lime green color. That was exactly what I wanted. And I was so excited to have it. And I had an iPod Touch before that, and I had a tablet even before that. But this was my first time having a cellular device that I could take with me away from home, away from Wi-Fi, and still have access and connection to all of these different platforms that I was already using as an even younger child. And it was exciting and it was new and there was just so many things to do with it. And I had no idea what I was doing. And my parents had no idea what I was doing because I didn't know what they were doing because this was so new. And that's an important thing to take away here is that this social media was really new earlier on, and we have had to evolve with it, kind of change with it as it comes up. These are some pictures of me around that same era at 12 years old. These were pulled from my Instagram, from my Snapchat memories. And this is what it was. It was taking these pictures and it was sending them to friends and adding goofy little captions. And it was so much fun. And it was, in a way, the Wild West. Anything was allowed. Anything could go. And we had a lot of fun, but again, didn't really know what was going on. That is in stark contrast to today in the year 2025, where social media is so established and now is becoming and has become preferred amongst this younger generation. In some studies published by Statista, upwards of 95% of Gen Z has access to a smartphone. That is a huge percentage. And as we've looked into some studies about why this might be preferred, we're seeing that with the turmoil and a lot of the constant change that Gen Z has grown up with throughout the 2010s, we're talking about the threat of mass shootings and political unrest. We came to age during the pandemic, where social violence was starting to become a daily thing we were seeing in the news. And this technology offers a form for us to connect and to still be engaged and involved with not only those close to us, but also those on a larger scale while fronting the dangers of those fears. And we've seen that to be a huge influence on why Gen Z is so much preferring to use social media in that way. Again, this 12-year-old boy had no idea what he was doing. He was learning as he went. He was updating the apps every month or so because they were updating that quickly. But he didn't really have any habits that were teaching him what was going on. And for a moment there, he started to get a little distracted and had to learn through some hard ways that we need both in person and digital connection as members of Gen Z. And we want both. We want to be able to connect online and we want to be able to connect in person at events with our friends at hangouts. And it is our responsibility as institutions to give both of these opportunities to these students so that they can best enjoy their first year experience.
To contribute to the story or the narrative that Tanner's been building with the history of social media, something that we see as time has gone on is that the older generations that were the first, on the front line of these social media apps or communicating online, maybe formed some bad habits, and their children watched them form these bad habits and picked up on them and maybe suffered from them and then learned from them. So because of that, as we move forward, you see things, Tanner, if you, yep, thanks. If you'll click to the next slide. So we'll see things from this generation like Pixar, it didn't happen. Happy birthday, Pixar, it didn't happen. Your birthday's not real unless you posted about it. Unless it's online, it's not a real connection. It's not a real event. It has no real meaning. So we see and hear those things from this generation as they kind of picked up on these things from their parents. That sits more with millennials. And then as Gen Z comes in, they took these things and have switched it and kind of said, I actually don't know that I feel that way. I don't know that I connect to the idea of Pixar, it didn't happen. So here you'll see 92% of Gen Z indicate that being authentic and true to oneself is extremely or very important. And they're kind of reconnecting back to these authentic connections and being themselves rather than putting on a show through these social media apps.
And again, as members of Gen Z coming to college, it's important to understand the audience that is being worked with here. The traditional college freshman was if they're coming to school about the ages of 18 or 19 or so, they were born in the year 2006 or after. Again, the traditional college freshman is between the ages of 18 and 19 years old. And those born after 2006 have had a lot less to figure out, so to say, when it comes to social media. We are seeing that, again, social media has become super established. It's become normal. It has become something that we are aware of as a society and as generations. And we understand what's going on, as opposed to those of us that were in the earlier years of Gen Z, who were still using social media from a very early age, but we were still adapting and growing with it. If the student born in 2006 got their phone when they were 12 years old, like I did, they got their phone around the year 2018, 2019. That I'm barely 22 years old, and that feels like it was yesterday, even just for me. These students have not been on social media for very long, and the platforms that they have been on are established and they understand what's going on. And with that, there have been more resources to help these students understand the potential toxicity of social media. They're being taught in schools and through their family and through their past experiences with social media how to use it appropriately. We're aware of how terrible you feel after doom scrolling, we like to call it, where you scroll on Instagram or you scroll through Reels or TikTok for 45 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, and it happens. And we're aware of that. And that awareness allows us to, if nothing else, at least understand what's happening and think of maybe ways to work around that. We're building healthier habits as Gen Z. We're seeing that 83% of adult age Gen Z have taken steps to limit their usage at some point in their life. Some of these more popular steps might just be unfollowing or muting an account. It is so normal socially to say, you know what, I'm going to take a break from social media. I can remember when I was 13 or 14 years old in middle school, and we would do a school-wide phone fast, or maybe with your friends, it was kind of trendy to be like, we're going to do a phone fast for today. And it was so scary. You'd like post on your story, you'd post on your Instagram and say, hey guys, just so you know, like I'm going to be off social media for the next 24 hours. And you had to tell everybody because you were so scared of what you were going to miss out. That is so different today, where people will take a break for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, months at a time. And we're not telling anybody about it because we don't need to, because we're using social media in ways that feel appropriate and authentic to us. And it's no longer about keeping up or about making sure that we're being informed on everything we need to. It's becoming a lot more having to do with our choices.
So with that background of social media, we want to highlight or identify the shift that's happened on these platforms. The screen shows right now a throwback, post from when I was younger of what Facebook was used for or what posts looked like on social media. It was a lot more stagnant photos with a lot of words, descriptions of what had happened, really very simple, and then a lot of words. It was much more slow paced. You take the time to really read through and figure out and interact that way. Now, what we see is very different. Tanner put this screen together, and I love to show it because it feels a little bit overwhelming, but it's the reality that we live in, that these students are coming with the expectation that interactions are quick and they're easy to manipulate and to move and to do multiple things at once. They're always multitasking, right? You can swipe down and respond to a text message while a video is playing in the background, and it's always going and going and going. So it's important to recognize that that shift has happened and that that's kind of what students expect as far as communication goes. As educators, it's important for us to keep up with that and to recognize that the way that we connect and communicate with these students needs to match what they're used to receiving. So they receive best this quick and short and simple communication. And if we can match that, then they'll respond better to the communication that we send them and have more opportunity for those meaningful interactions and real connections with others.
Yeah, this pattern of interaction is pretty unique to Gen Z. We are, again, the generation, the first generation, these students born in 2006 that have never not known scrolling through Reels, who have never not known a world where you can open up a platform of social media and not only see what's going on with your inner circle, but go to your For You page and see what's happening in the world, see what's happening across the nation. And these patterns of interactions in Gen Z have transferred pretty well, we're seeing in our incoming students, to in-person interactions. We're seeing that Gen Z is confident. We are very confident in our ability to walk into a situation, assess, understand what's going on, and then interact if we choose to. And we're so confident because we're doing this constantly online. This pattern looks like identifying something that you connect with in a piece of media. You then might decide to interact in some way. You might like it, or you might save it to a folder that you might want to go back to and watch later. And then if you choose to, you engage. You drop a comment, or you send a direct message to the person's social media account. And again, we're seeing that this translates in these members of Gen Z to these in-person interactions where they're able to show up to an event, look around, and maybe they're at a library and they sit down to somebody. They look next to them. Here is a girl with a cool pair of earrings. Oh, cool. I like those. I connect with those. I think that those are something we might both find cool. You might choose to interact a little bit. Hey, I really like your earrings. Oh, thank you so much. You choose to engage. Where did you get them? Okay, cool. Are you a student at SUU? Okay, cool. How long have you been here? And again, that pattern is something we're so comfortable with because we are doing it constantly online. And schools have been super quick to work with this online aspect of the lives of Gen Z when it comes to education, especially during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. We're seeing that things were super quick to move online, and we've handled it. There's still studies being done about the harm and effects of everything that happened during the pandemic, with a lot of increase in screen time and whatnot. But we were able to pretty easily, as members of Gen Z, adapt to this online education system. We're seeing that as of 2021, 90% of American high schools and middle schools are providing a personal device for every single student in the classroom. Whether that is an iPad or a tablet or a Chromebook or some type of laptop, 90% of these schools are providing one for every student, with 84% of elementary schools doing the same and providing a device. And I started to see this towards the tail end of my education. We got a new elementary school built in our small town, which was a huge deal. They tore down the old one, built a new one, and they introduced the cows, which was, I don't know why we called it cow, but it was essentially like a mobile computer lab of laptops that you would wheel between classrooms. And we started using these Chromebooks as part of our daily education. And we didn't have personal devices then. But again, as we're seeing, most students now in America are having a personal device used in their education, which is super cool. And again, this begs the question, how can we take these habits and transfer it not only from these interactions with education within the high school and the younger years, but how can we use this in situations of higher learning? And we're using Canvas, right? A lot of schools are using Canvas or some type of banner to interact with their students and keep things digitalized. But we've been using social media as education. That's great. We're used to it. We're also have been using it socially our entire lives. And we're not integrating that. We're not using that as institutions higher learning. We're seeing it in ways that we could be. And that's been something we've been trying to do at SUU, is take these habits and use it not only to improve their education, but their social lives while they are interacting at SUU.
So as we've learned to grow and adapt with the habits and the needs of the students as far as social media goes, our office and our department has done a wide variety of things ranging from trying out Facebook groups to trying, we run an Instagram account that sees a lot of success, all kinds of things like that. But for the purposes of this webinar, we wanted to really focus on Nearpeer and what a success we've seen with Nearpeer. So there's a video up on the screen that you can see that kind of shows or gives an idea of how Nearpeer matches what students are used to seeing on their social media, the way they can scroll and they can select in and select out of different groups. They can identify their interests and their likes. We see an average, tell me if I'm wrong, Dustin, here, but I think our school has seen an average of like 32 interests or something like that, upward of 30, where students are just choosing things. And to me, that shows a need for connection. They're begging for anyone to connect with them by choosing so many things. They're just giving opportunity on opportunity for someone to connect with them. And so students have the opportunity to interact on here and to go through and connect with others who have similar interests. And then from there, we can help them create a group chat based on an interest or based on where they're coming from. We have groups based on location. So if they're traveling from out of state, if they're coming from in state, if they're a non-traditional student, they can join a chat with other non-traditional students. So those are a couple of things that we see here that have been useful to us as we're trying to capitalize on what students are already good at and what they know with these social media interactions.
Vanessa, on your point, I'll just say what we see at SUU, we see so many places where students want to share a lot about themselves to express themselves and also to connect with other people who are like them.
Yeah. Thanks, Dustin. So here we also have just a couple of sample chats that we've pulled from our platform. These are real conversations that have happened between students. One of them happened on a chat about finding a roommate. So if someone's coming to SUU and they haven't found housing yet, or maybe they have housing, but they know they have room for a roommate still, they can jump in this chat and try to find someone who fits what they're looking for. If you take a look at that conversation there on the left, asking, do you have on-campus housing? No, not yet. Do you? Nope, I'm still looking at off-campus housing. Well, great. I called and they told me that, they're building these connections based on experience, and that's helping hopefully for them to feel like they're not so alone as they come here to SUU. And then the chat on the right is similar, super normalizing the things that these students are experiencing as they say, I don't have a major yet and I'm not sure what I want to do. Hey, that's okay, me too. I'm thinking about this. What class are you taking? They're starting to build these connections and find their people before they're even here, so that when they're here, that feels less intimidating. And on this slide, I wanted to share a story that we saw last summer. We'll share a little bit more in the next slides about how we integrate Nearpeer and how we make these things work. But last summer we had every summer we have students come to our campus for what we call a personalized visit, as it's a part of their onboarding process. They're invited to come and to meet with their peer mentor and to go visit offices for different resources. And every once in a while we'll get students who maybe went to high school together or who are friends, or they're coming down together and they'll book it together so that they can come, and be with each other for that experience. Last summer, we had two students that booked their appointments together, and they came together and they seemed like they were the best of friends. So we all assumed that they had come from the same high school, that they were high school friends, they just knew each other. And as we got talking, someone asked, how long have you guys been friends? And they're like, oh, we just met today. And we said, what? How did you coordinate? How did you plan this trip and figure out that you wanted to come on the same day at the same time? And they said, Nearpeer. We met on Nearpeer and chatted. And so asked me, are you going to do a personalized visit? And I said, I don't know. I'm thinking about it. And they said, well, I'm going to do mine on this day. You should do it the same day. And they were able to come and meet up on campus. And so I use that story to highlight that our whole goal with Nearpeer is to be the starting point for these interactions, so that these students have the confidence to move those relationships to in-person interactions. It's just a great confidence boost when they can build a connection on the platform and feel secure and safe, like they've got a person here on campus. And then when they get here and they find that familiar face that they knew on Nearpeer, those in-person interactions and that loneliness is a lot easier for them to kind of grapple with.
Vanessa mentioned a little bit about our onboarding process. And again, as part of that, we have these students coming to campus and doing a personalized visit where they're getting a tour of campus, they're connecting with their academic advisor and our financial wellness office and us as their peer mentors. And we're seeing that these connections having been made before they come to school have been so helpful once they actually come and start school a couple months later in the fall. And this tool of Nearpeer has allowed us to make that connection on an even larger scale because we don't get every single student coming to campus early, especially for these students that live across the country or from a different country. A lot of them aren't able, it's not feasible for them to fly to Utah for a day visit and then go back just so they can come and start school again. But Nearpeer is allowing these students to form these connections, to start these relationships before they even step foot on campus or maybe even step foot in Utah, so that when they show up, they're already having that sense of connection. And again, that connection, it's comfortable and it's real because that's what we've known our entire lives. This isn't a this isn't a replacement for anything because it's a connection in and of itself. It's not a replacement for in-person interaction. It's an online interaction, and that is meaningful to us as members of Gen Z in a maybe in a different way, but in the same fashion that a in-person interaction is useful for us. And we're seeing Nearpeer being a huge tool in helping the students to feel connected. My entire goal as a peer mentor is to help these students feel comfortable as a student at SUU, at Southern Utah University, and to have a great first year so they're able to retain on campus and continue their education. And some students are super excited. They show up to campus and they want to sit down and they want to talk for an hour or 2 hours about everything that's important to them and their goals. Other students want to check in over text every couple weeks. That's all they want. And it's important for me as a peer mentor and for us as institutions to recognize that these different students have different preferred means of interaction. They have different ways that they like to feel connected to people. And we need to make sure we're tailoring our responses and making sure that our interaction with these students is happening in ways that are effective for them. For these students that are needing this connection over social media before they interact in person, because it's more comfortable, because it fronts some of these dangers, it fronts some of these fears that they're having. In these situations, Nearpeer it's so helpful for that because you can hop on Instagram and if you know somebody's name, you can find their Instagram. But with Nearpeer, they are only interacting with and seeing other incoming students that are coming to SUU. So they know that the people they're seeing on the app are people that they can continue to have a relationship with, not only through a digital format, but also to in-person interaction. And that's been a key part of what we have tried to implement this last year and what we have plans to start again this coming fall, wanting to help to bridge this gap between the Nearpeer group chats, between the Nearpeer interactions and connections, to hanging out on campus, to being able to go to events together. Because it's important to recognize that Gen Z needs and wants both forms of interaction. In a study that was published by the Harris poll, about half of Gen Z said that they wish some different social media apps were never created. TikTok, Twitter, or X as it was, Snapchat. These are devices, or these are programs that we're using on our devices and we've been using for years, and at the same time might recognize things might be better if these weren't here. And it's important to recognize that we understand that as Gen Z. We understand the time that can be wasted on these apps. We understand the pitfalls of spending too much time or interacting in ways that we shouldn't be on social media. And at the same time, we're using it because that's the world we live in, and that allows us to use that connection. But we just share that to again point out that we understand that we need and want both forms of interaction as members of Gen Z. And so we as an institution are working to implement methods to bridge that gap and make sure they're using both of those.
So with that, we'll transition a little bit to what SUU does and how we use Nearpeer. We'll start with these statistics that Nearpeer provided for us that are helpful to see some of the successes that we've seen. We have an 88% adoption of Nearpeer from our incoming students. So the incoming class of 2024, 88% of our students were on and used Nearpeer. That totaled to 66,000 hours of use. 57,000 of one-on-one peer connections, 52,000 one-on-one chats, and 4,000 different group chats. So Dustin, is there anything here that you want to highlight or add?
One, just a shout out to each of you to drive this level of engagement. In particular, getting 9 out of 10 students to voluntarily do anything is sometimes takes some work, and so building it into your culture and your process really shows the results. So that's terrific. And then just to see the engagement, to see that 86% of students connected with at least one person is great, and an average of 23 is strong and in line with many schools where we see that students have that strong need. They're worried about, will I make one friend? So to connect with 23 before is really helpful and reassuring. And I think also the skew toward one-on-one chat is something that we see is part of the experience today for Gen Z and for even non-traditional students. Whereas you can see 52,000 one-on-one chats versus 4,000 group chats. This ability to help people find their people and connect individually as we would in real life is really important, not just throwing them in a group. So great work. Congrats to each of you.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Dustin. Yeah, and you'll see there that chart as well that shows maybe the time that students are the
Yeah.
most likely to engage, right? Students are engaging a lot after that typical 9 to 5, when maybe we aren't available to be on all the time answering questions or facilitating those connections. They're on making those connections on their own. So that's an awesome thing to note as well.
And I'll just say there that we see is similar for schools that also have large non-traditional populations too. I think for traditional age students, they're just up later being social. And for adult students, sometimes they finally finish their work, put their kids to bed, and it's 10 o'clock at night that they actually have time to themselves to find others like them. So this pattern is pretty common, but like you said, a lot of it happens when, staff is not really planning to be around to engage, so it helps students kind of organize on their own.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dustin.
You're welcome.
Awesome. So a little bit about what we do and I guess how we've achieved these numbers or what has helped us to find success with Nearpeer. For us, technically, Nearpeer is an opt-in. It's not required. They're not automatically enrolled, anything like that. However, it is pretty intimately integrated with our in-person orientation. So every fall we have our big new student orientation we call Thunder U. Students come to campus and they are split into groups. We've tried a variety of different things. Some years we've done groups by interest, some years we've done groups by major. But regardless of how we split them up into different groups, we use Nearpeer as the main form of communication for that group. So their orientation leader or whoever is the leader of their group, usually a current student on campus, will be the leader in a group that's created for them. And at check-in, we tell them on your Nearpeer app, jump in and join this group. If you're not on Nearpeer, let's get you on right now. And we take the time during that initial contact when they first hit campus to get them on this app, because we feel that it's that important to have the opportunity for them to make these connections with students kind of on their own terms. So that's how we get our students on to Nearpeer. Once they're on, we have peer mentors. Sorry, Tanner, go back one slide. Thank you. We've got our peer mentors and student leaders that are on there that we have available to nudge students to sign up if they're not on or to facilitate conversations. So they're in there answering questions, asking questions, figuring out, how many of you are into pickleball, how many of you like to hike, these kinds of things, and trying to help get those conversations started. In my experience, in my opinion, initiating those interactions is key. I do want to touch right here on the fact that we recognize that we're pretty lucky to have a team of peer mentors the size that we do, and that not every university or school has that. And so I wanted to also just point out that this is possible without the manpower. In fact, if anything, Nearpeer is a great place to be if you don't have that manpower, because we see all the time different personalities of students that come in. We had one student last summer that we referred to as the Nearpeer Queen. She was an incoming student just like everyone else, but she was in there every day answering questions that students were asking. Of course, we had to facilitate and manage and check and make sure that she wasn't giving false information. But most of the time she was pretty accurate in the responses that she gave to other students' questions. And she kind of established herself as an incoming student who was knowledgeable about these things or was willing to help kind of explore and find the answers with another student. So truly, these students are really very capable of creating these interactions and building these connections on their own. They just need the platform and the opportunity to do so. And then every once in a while, for us to throw out a conversation starter can help keep things going and keep these students really engaged until they get here to campus. So then looking forward, a couple of things that we're hoping to improve with our near peer use this year or in coming years. Tanner mentioned earlier in our presentation that we are hoping to have a higher impact as far as facilitating more in-person opportunities or in-person connections that stem from these initial near-peer connections. So students, we see a lot of integration or communication as they begin their journey here at SUU, and then they kind of taper off a little bit. Group chats die off, or they don't have as many questions and they're in classes and now they're stressed. So we're hoping to take these groups and these interactions and connections and create more intentional opportunities for those students to move it off the screen and to meet in person. What this looks like, hopefully, is matching some groups with the clubs we have on campus and creating near peer chats related to that so that students can find their community there and then create a club from it. So now they can get together on campus and have that real community. And then hopefully we'll move towards giving students a little bit more autonomy with creating groups. Currently, they have to go through a process emailing someone else on campus to create a group chat. And I know we've worked a bunch with Christy and Nearpeer's been great to help us brainstorm other ideas about maybe possibly having a chat for students to give suggestions for a new group to be made. That way we have one hand on the steering wheel to make sure that the chats are appropriate and fit the need of the students, but then they have the other hand on the steering wheel to give the suggestions and make requests for group chats that way. So that's a little bit about what we do and how we found that success with Nearpeer, as well as what we're planning to do moving forward to continue to improve our Nearpeer use.
And Vanessa, thanks for commenting on just the ease or what to do when schools don't have a lot of resources to launch. We do get that question a lot, particularly this time of year for the fall, which is how can I do something that's positive when I don't have a bunch of staff to assign? So we for anyone who is in that bucket, which is a lot of the schools that we partner with, there are very simple ways to get started and to launch within just a couple days. And with very limited effort, we see generally around 25%, 35% of students sign up, and then when you deeply embed it in, like SUU as the gold standard, 88% of students signing up and take advantage of Nearpeer.
Awesome. Thanks, Dustin. And with that, I think we'll wrap up and just say, in summary, Nearpeer's been great for us to facilitate these interactions with students and to create opportunities for them to, like I said, to really interact on their own terms and in a space that is comfortable to them, that feels natural, that they use day in and day out, with their other relationships in life. It feels a little bit more natural for them to start there. And so, yeah, it's been a great experience for us. And then to highlight what Tanner said, students need both. They need the in-person interactions and those connections, and the authenticity there, but they also really thrive and enjoy connecting behind a screen as well.
So it looks like we're
Perfect.
just about out of time here. If we do have any questions that we think, if you wouldn't mind looking through the chat and just seeing if there's any we might mind or would want to answer out loud, we can totally do that. If not, then we'll wrap up here.
There was one question that I see there was an answer to, but this notion of how behavior might vary based on socioeconomic background. And we certainly do see particularly lower income students, Pell eligible students, first gen students, when their parents may be less of a guide if they didn't go to college, that many of them come in with more questions and they're not sure if their questions are dumb questions or where to ask them. And so creating forums for students to be able to ask questions that feel like it's casual, like in Nearpeer, can be very helpful because we just see there's sometimes just either less knowledge or they might be going through something. So they got a bunch of emails about something and they missed them, and now they're paying attention, and and they missed where to go for resources. So creating spaces in Nearpeer, it's easy to do that for sure, where someone can ask a question, or if it's about financial aid or deadlines, and see what the answer is, or see that someone else already asked the question so that they don't have to ask it, can be helpful to make sure that they get the answers they need. But it is we do see certainly a higher need for students who have higher barriers or just challenges to get to college, and helping to reduce those is really important. I see another question might have just popped up here, which is, do you find faculty start or continue using Nearpeer with their classes or after the semester? On the academic side, are using Nearpeer?
Yeah, that's a great question, Marianne. And it looks like Ammon will type an answer there so you can have it in writing as well. We don't see a lot of faculty integration, but we also haven't tried pushing the faculty integration. We use it primarily for the student-to-student connection. And then we have staff members more on there to help facilitate answering questions and that kind of a thing. So we haven't really integrated a lot with faculty and staff. It's more that or with faculty, it's more the staff. And even then, the goal isn't for them to build a connection with a staff member or a faculty member. It's for them to connect with each other in the way that we use it, at least.
That's great. I'll say one really simple way for faculty and other staff to use Nearpeer, even if they're not actively in it every day, is to be able to better understand their students that they're serving. Because if you're with even a small class, but especially a large class or a lecture, and you're trying to work with a student or trying to figure out why there's a challenge, the ability to see that student's profile that they've voluntarily created to share who they are can be really helpful to connect, because when you understand what makes someone tick, what their passions are, more about their life experience, it can be really meaningful to be able to connect as a human being before you jump into, maybe why someone is, having academic challenges or other struggles, because you can relate as a human being first. And we do find faculty and other staff really appreciate that, even if they're not in every day to drive engagement, but just to get a glimpse into and better understand their students. Well, thank you so much, Vanessa and Tanner, and Eamon. Thank you for joining today, and thank you, audience members, for joining as well. Appreciate your making the time to share some of what you've learned in your guidance. We'll send a follow-up. There'll be an automated link with the replay, and then we'll send some other resources as well as a follow-up for anyone who has questions, as an opportunity to help any way we can. And with that, that's a wrap. Thank you again, SUU team.
Thanks, Dustin and Nearpeer.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.